"Which road leads to the Wicked Witch of the West?" asked Dorothy. "Keep to the west, where the sun sets, and you cannot fail to find her." The Emerald City was soon left far behind. In the late afternoon, the sun shone hot in their faces, for there were no trees to offer them shade, so that before night, Dorothy and Toto and the lion were tired and lay down upon the grass and fell asleep, with the Woodman and Scarecrow keeping watch. Now the Wicked Witch of the West had but one eye, yet that was as powerful as a telescope and could see everywhere. So as she sat in the door of her castle, she happened to look around and saw Dorothy lying asleep with all her friends about her. They were a long distance off, but the Wicked Witch was angry to find them in her country, so she blew upon a silver whistle that hung around her neck. At once there came running to her from all directions a pack of great wolves. They had long legs and fierce eyes and sharp teeth. "Go to these people," said the witch, "and tear them to pieces." "This is my fight," said the Woodman, "so get behind me and I will meet them as they come to me." He seized his axe, which he made very sharp, and as the leader of the wolves came on the Tin Woodman, swung his arm and chopped the wolf's head from its body so that it immediately died. As soon as he could raise his axe, another wolf came up, and he also fell under the sharp edge of the Tin Woodman's weapon. There were 40 wolves, and 40 times a wolf was killed, so that at last they all lay dead in a heap before the Woodman. Now this same morning the Wicked Witch came to the door of a castle and looked out with her one eye that could see far off. She saw all the wolves lying dead, and the strangers still traveling through her country. This made her angrier than before, and she blew the silver whistle twice. Straightway a great flock of wild crows came flying toward her, enough to darken the sky. And the Wicked Witch said to the King Crow, "Fly at once to these strangers, peck out their eyes and tear them to pieces." The wild crows flew in one great flock toward Dorothy and her companions. When the little girl saw them coming, she was afraid. But the Scarecrow said, "This is my battle, so lie down beside me and you will not be harmed." So they all lied upon the ground except the Scarecrow, and he stood up and stretched out his arms. And when the crows saw him, they were frightened, as these birds always are by scarecrows, and did not dare to come nearer. But the King Crow said, "It's only a stuffed man. I will peck his eyes out." The King Crow flew at the Scarecrow, who caught it by the head and twisted its neck until it died. And then another crow flew at him, and the Scarecrow twisted its neck also. There were 40 crows, and 40 times the Scarecrow twisted a neck, until at last all were lying dead beside him. When the Wicked Witch looked out again and saw all her crows lying in a heap, she got into a terrible rage and blew 3 times upon her silver whistle. Forthwith there were heard a great buzzing in the air, and a swarm of black bees came flying toward her. "Go to the strangers and sting them to death," commanded the witch. And the bees turned and flew rapidly until they came to where Dorothy and her friends were walking. But the Woodman had seen them coming, and the Scarecrow had decided what to do. "Take out my straw and scatter it all over the little girl and the dog and the lion," he said to the Woodman, "and the bees cannot sting them." This the Woodman did, and as Dorothy lay close beside the lion and held Toto in her arms, the straw covered them entirely. The bees came and found no one to sting but the Woodman, so they flew at him and broke off all their stings against the tin, without hurting the Woodman at all. And as bees cannot live without their stings, that was the end of the black bees, and they lay scattered thick about the Woodman like heaps of fine coal. The Wicked Witch was so angry when she saw her black bees in little heaps like fine coal that she stomped her foot and tore her hair and gnashed her teeth. She could not understand how all her plans to destroy these strangers had failed. But she was a powerful witch, as well as a wicked one, and she soon made up her mind how to act. There was, in the witch's cupboard, a golden cap, with a circle of diamonds and rubies running around it. This golden cap had a charm. Whoever owned it could call 3 times upon the winged monkeys, who would obey any order they were given. But no person could command these strange creatures more than 3 times. Twice already the wicked witch had used the charm of the cap. Once was when she made the Winkies her slaves and set herself to rule over the country. The second time was when she had fought against the great Oz himself and driven him out of the land of the West. Only once more could she use this golden cap, for which reason she did not like to do so until all her other powers were exhausted. But now that her fierce wolves and her wild crows and her stinging bees were gone, and her slaves had been scared away by the cowardly lion, she saw there was no other way left to destroy Dorothy and her friends. So the wicked witch took the cap from the cupboard and placed it upon her head. Then she stood up on her left foot and said slowly, "Epi, Pepi, Kaki." Then she stood upon her right foot and said, "Hilo, Hallo, Hello." After this she stood upon both feet and cried in a loud voice, "Zizzy, Zuzi, Zik." Now the charm began to work. The sky was darkened, and a low rumbling sound was heard in the air. There was a rush of many wings, a great chattering and laughing, and the sun came out of the dark sky to show the wicked witch surrounded by a crowd of monkeys, each with a pair of immense and powerful wings on his shoulders. One, much bigger than the others, seemed to be their leader. He flew close to the witch and said, "You have called us for the 3rd and last time. What do you command?" "Go to those strangers that are in my land and destroy them all except the lion," said the wicked witch. "Bring that beast to me, for I have a mind to harness him like a horse and make him work." "Your commands shall be obeyed," said the leader. Then with a great deal of chattering and noise, the winged monkeys flew away to the place where Dorothy and her friends were walking. Some of the monkeys seized the Tin Woodman and carried him through the air until they were over a country thickly covered with sharp rocks. Here they dropped the poor woodman, who fell a great distance to the rocks, where he lay so battered and dented that he could neither move nor groan. Others of the monkeys caught the scarecrow, and with their long fingers pulled out all the straw out of his clothes and head, and they made his hat and boots and clothes into a small bundle and threw it in the top branches of a tall tree. The remaining monkeys threw pieces of stout rope around the lion and wound many coils about his body and head and legs until he was unable to bite or scratch or struggle in any way. Then they lifted him up and flew him away to the witch's castle, where he was placed in a small yard with a high iron fence around it so that he could not escape. But Dorothy, they did not harm at all. She stood with Toto in arms, watching the sad fate of her comrades and thinking it would soon be her turn. The leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her, his long, hairy arms stretched out and his ugly face grinning terribly. But he saw the mark of the good witch's kiss upon her forehead and stopped short, motioning the others not to touch her. "We dare not harm this little girl," he said to them, "for she is protected by the power of good, and that is greater than the power of evil. All we can do is carry her to the castle of the wicked witch and leave her there." So carefully and gently they lifted Dorothy in their arms and carried her swiftly through the air until they came to the castle, where they set her down in front of the doorstep. Then the leader said to the witch, "We have obeyed you for the last time. As far as we were able, the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow are destroyed, and the lion is tied up in your arm. The little girl we dare not harm, nor the dog she carries in her arms. Your power over our band is now ended, and you will never see us again." Then all the winged monkeys, with much laughing and chattering and noise, flew into the air and were soon out of sight. Dorothy's life became very sad as she grew to understand that it would be harder than ever to get back to Kansas and Aunt Em again. Sometimes she would cry bitterly for hours, with Toto sitting at her feet and looking into her face, whining dismally to show how sorry he was for her little mistress. Toto did not really care whether he was in Kansas or the land of Oz, as long as Dorothy was with him. But he knew the little girl was unhappy, and that made him unhappy too. Now the wicked witch had a great longing to have for her own the silver shoes for which the girl always wore. Her bees, her crows, and her wolves were lying in heaps and drying up, and she had used up all the power of the golden cap. But if she could only get hold of the silver shoes, they would give her more power than all the things she had lost. She watched Dorothy carefully to see if she ever took off her shoes, thinking that she might steal them. But the child was so proud of her pretty shoes that she never took them off, except at night when she took her bath. The witch was too much afraid of the dark to go into Dorothy's room at night to take the shoes, and her dread of water was greater than her fear of the dark. So she never came near when Dorothy was bathing. Indeed, the old witch never touched water, nor ever let water touch her in any way. But the wicked creature was very cunning, and she finally thought of a trick that would give her what she wanted. She placed a bar of iron in the middle of the kitchen floor, and then by her magic arts made the iron invisible to human eyes, so that when Dorothy walked across the floor, she stumbled over the bar, not being able to see it, and fell at full length. She was not much hurt, but in her fall, one of the silver shoes came off, and before she could reach it, the witch had snatched it away and put it on her own skinny foot. The wicked witch was greatly pleased with the success of her trick, for as long as she had one of these shoes, she owned half the power of the charm, and Dorothy could not use it against her, even if she had known how to do so. The little girl, seeing she had lost one of her pretty shoes, grew angry and said to the witch, "Give me back my shoe!" "I will not," retorted the witch, "for it is now my shoe and not yours." "You're a wicked creature," cried Dorothy. "You have no right to take my shoe from me." "I shall keep it just the same," said the witch, laughing at her, "and someday I shall get the other one from you too." This made Dorothy so very angry that she picked up the bucket of water that stood near and dashed it over the witch, wetting her from head to foot. Instantly, the wicked woman gave a loud cry of fear, and then, as Dorothy looked at her in wonder, the witch began to shrink and fall away. "See what you've done!" she screamed. "In a minute I shall melt away." "I'm very sorry indeed," said Dorothy, who was truly frightened to see the witch actually melting away like brown sugar before her very eyes. "Didn't you know the water would be the end of me?" asked the witch in a wailing, desperating voice. "Of course not," answered Dorothy. "How should I?" "Well, in a few minutes I shall all be melted away, and you will have the castle to yourself. I have been wicked in my day, but I never thought a little girl like you would ever be able to melt me and end my wicked deeds. Look out! Here I go!" With these words, the witch fell down in a brown, melted, shapeless mass and began to spread over the clean boards of the kitchen floor. Seeing that she had really melted away to nothing, Dorothy drew another bucket of water and threw it over the mess. She then swept it out the door, and after picking out the silver shoe, which was all that was left of the old woman, she cleaned it and dried it with a cloth and put it on her foot again. Then, being at last free to do as she chose, she ran out to the courtyard to tell the lion that the wicked witch of the West had come to an end, and that they were no longer prisoners in a strange land.